and how do they actually help us achieve the ultimate goal, the ultimate purpose, and the ultimate success in life, which is achieving human excellence. So let's provide a bit of context from the youth perspective, and then once we have that context, then we'll come back to these three key pillars of the deen of Islam and how it helps us achieve ihsan or human excellence, right? So my first question to you is that let's think about it from the youth perspective, right? What is success and failure? If we ask an average youth out there in the community today, what would be their perception of success and failure? So what is success to you, right? Representing the youth. Take this and write it down there.
If you have a lot of money.
If you have lots of money, then that's one of the indicators of success. All right, what else? Quick.
If you have knowledge.
Okay. If you achieve knowledge and you excel in that, okay, that's a measure of success.
So
and then knowledge.
Like Bill Gates.
Bill Gates. So this is an individual, but what was the measure of his success? There was
Microsoft.
His Microsoft skill and knowledge and combination of that with his marketing skills, right? Okay, that's fine. Ronaldo, so he is famous, right? So fame is a success measure, right? So write down fame. So you're saying that lots of money, success in life in a particular field, all those types of things, right? And then what is failure to you? What would we consider as failure?
Someone who's in drugs, doing drugs and in gangs or in company of really bad people.
So it depends on the company you keep, right? So if you are in a bad company, right? If you are in a bad company, or if you get involved in wasting your time, going to the extremes, joining gangs and drugs and not excelling in the fields like education and other things, right? So that's considered as a failure. And that's why I knew that would be one of the indicators of failure. So what I've done is I've brought just one story as an example of failure, right? And this is related to Ottawa, right? So here in Ottawa, the situation is that look at this headline. It says that Muslim murder spree in Canada's capital. So mostly what's happening is that over the past couple of years, that there are shootings happening and people are killing each other, and majority of them, both the victims and the perpetrators, are Muslim, or majority of them Muslim youth, right? So that's a major issue, and that's an indicator of failure, right? So I just wanted to discuss with you why is this happening, and then what's the solution, right? And the solution would link us back to where we started, and then we'll explain that how achieving human excellence should be the ultimate objective of our lives, right? So why the answer is that there are several risk factors which affect youth and other in certain communities, in certain socioeconomic situations, in certain circumstances, that they end up going to the extreme and committing those crimes or become victims of those crimes. So there are so many risk factors, and there are so many protective factors. So if you are studying criminology, then you'll get the answer to why this is happening, right? So the general perception of those Muslim youth, right, and probably something wrong with whatever they're learning, or they're getting radicalized, or all those kinds of things. So that's not the case. There are so many different factors which lead to that. But what I'm going to discuss, so I'm not going to discuss these with you today. What I'm going to discuss with you today is that we have one of the best mechanism, one of the best protective factor, right? That if you use that effectively, then particularly Muslim youth, they won't end up in situations like these. So now the question is, what could be that main protective factor which can save youth from falling into those kinds of situations?
The constant reminders to come back to the middle.
All right, so how do those constant reminders happen?
Say you're doing something bad, and then the call to prayer happens, and then you leave everything so that you come back and do a good deed, you pray, and then you'll be less likely to go back to the sin.
So the condition is that you would be praying, you'd pay attention to the call for prayer if you are what? A believer, right? If you are a Muslim and you're believing in the call for prayer, and then when you hear the call for prayer, either on your cell phone or in the mosque, then you'll go for prayer, and then that would be a reminder for you. But then you'll benefit from that reminder if you are a believer, right? So the key piece is what? The key piece is the belief, right? So most of the youth, particularly the Muslim youth, who end up in those kinds of situations, they are believers. So there is something missing, right? And what is missing is that they are living in denial, or what we can say is that they are living in their fantasy. They're living in their fantasy world, away from the reality. So they are away from the reality, and that's why they're away from their belief and the practice of the deen as well. So then what happens? Tell me.
They end up in a graveyard or hospital or jail.
So based on the facts that are in front of us, they are either ending up in graveyard or in the hospital, or where?
Jail.
Or in jail, behind the bars, right? So there's jail. And then that's the stage. So in this case, this is way too late. When they go to the graveyard, that's the end of the story, right? And that was the end of their short existence, right? And nowhere to come back to the right path. But when they end up in jail, that's an opportunity for them again, right? And what the reality tells us, then they wake up, right? So the moment they end up in jail, a majority of them, they wake up, right? And when they wake up, where do they come? Back to their true belief. So here is an article that I pulled from our Canadian sources from the where was it published? In the Global News. So there's a chaplain, Yassine Dwyer, and he has been working in the Federal Correction Services for quite some time. And his conclusions are that the overwhelming majority of Muslim inmates who saw their religion as the most important part of their own transformation. So he's saying that for an overwhelming majority of Muslims, they just come back to their true faith, and then that becomes the key source of their transformation, right? And he also says that they have stopped drinking, they have stopped lying, they have stopped cheating, they started praying, they started fasting, and many of them that I've seen have changed their lives around. So then they get this opportunity and they change their lives around. In some cases, what happens is that, like for instance, this story is from US. So he was a young man too. He was 21 years old. He killed someone. He went to the jail, and despite the fact that the victim's family was saying that don't execute him, right? But they finally executed him after 14 years. Meanwhile, he changed his life. He woke up, but that was way too late based on the crime that he had committed, and he paid the price for that crime. But meanwhile, although he was transformed, he was mentoring troubled youth. He saved a few guards from assault. He also prevented some inmates from committing suicide. But their transformation didn't help him, right? So because there was way too late. But some of the inmates or some of the folks, Muslim youth who go to jail, then they have the opportunity to transform their life. In this same story, there's a story of a non-Muslim youth who was an Islamophobe, and he committed some hate crime, right? And he went to jail, and the total opposite happened. He learned about Islam, and he also became Muslim, right? So the point that I was trying to make is that we have the best protective factor for these Muslim youth, provided they wake up before they end up here and benefit from that. Now the question is that they're the best tool available, right? But what is holding them? What is keeping them in their fantasy world? What has happened to them? What's wrong?